Hello, students. Today we are going to do a very interesting poem named The Height of Ridiculous, Standard 10 English, presented by Sara Pereira. Let us first try to know more about the poet of the poem, Oliver Wendell Holmes. He was born on August 29, 1809 and died on October 7, 1894. He was an American physician, poet, and a humorist. A member of the Fireside Poets, he was acclaimed by his friends as one of the best writers of the day. His most famous prose works are the Breakfast Table series, which began with The Autocrat of the Breakfast Table. He was also an important medical reformer. In addition to his work as an author and poet, Holmes also served as a physician, professor, lecturer, and inventor, and although he never practiced it, he received formal training in law as well. He was well respected by his friends and garnered a large international following throughout his long life. Poems by Holmes, along with those by the other poets, were often required to be memorized by school children. Although learning by rote recitation began fading out by 1890s, these poets nevertheless remained fixed as ideal New England poets. Selected list of his works are Poems, Songs in Many Keys, Mechanism in Thought and Morals, The Autocrat of the Breakfast Table, The Professor at the Breakfast Table, The Poet at the Breakfast Table, etc. Let's read the poem first. The Height of the Ridiculous. I wrote some lines once on a time in wondrous merry mood, and thought as usual men would say they were exceeding good. They were so queer, so very queer, I laughed as I would die, albeit in the general way, a sober man am I. I called my servant, and he came. How kind it was of him to mind a slender man like me, he of the mighty limb. These to the printer I exclaimed, and in my humorous way I added as a trifling jest, there'll be the devil to pay. He took the paper, and I watched, and saw him peep within. At the first line he read, his face was all upon the grin. He read the next, the grin grew broad, and shot from ear to ear. He read the third, a chuckling noise I now began to hear. The fourth he broke into a roar, the fifth his waistband split, the sixth he burst 5 buttons off, and tumbled in a fit. 10 days and nights with sleepless eye I watched that wretched man, and since I never dare to write as funny as I can. Let us now discuss two stanzas at a time. I wrote some lines once on a time in wondrous merry mood, and thought as usual men would say they were exceeding good. They were so queer, so very queer, I laughed as I would die, albeit in the general way, a sober man am I. So the writer is trying to say that he wrote few lines when he was in a wondrous means delightful, merry mood. Merry and wondrous both mean same here. Okay, a delightful mood. And when he wrote it, it was so funny, so queer. That means so funny it was that he himself would die of laughter. And he's saying that albeit means though in a general way, he's a sober man, okay, a clear-headed and a serious person. But today he had written something so funny that he thought that he himself would die of laughter, and he believed that anybody who read it would say that it was exceeding good and it was exceedingly funny and exceedingly humorous. Next two stanzas. I called my servant and he came. How kind it was of him to mind a slender man like me, he of the might limb. This to the printer I exclaimed, and in my humorous way I added as a trifling jest, there'll be the devil to pay. So the writer, in a very serious mode, he handed that writing, whatever words he had written, whatever lines he had written, he handed them to the servant, and he sent him to the printer. And in a very trifling or in a very uh, simple manner, he said, so trifling means a small simple joke of no importance. Okay, in a jokey way, he said that the devil will be there to pay. And so the servant was wondering what is there exactly or what is the writing about. So he did not read it in front of the writer, but he was wondering what it is about. He took the paper and I watched and saw him peep within. At the first line he read, his face was all upon the grin. He read the next, the grin grew broad and shot from ear to ear. He read the third, a chuckling noise I now began to hear. So the writer actually himself wanted to check whether his writing was actually funny or no. So he was trying to look at the servant's reaction. The servant also took the paper and he peeped into the uh, writing of the writer, and at the first line only there was a small grin. Grin is a small slight smile on the face, and the smile grew broad when he read the second line, and it shot from year to year. This is an exaggerated statement where the writer is trying to say that the servant was actually f- finding that those lines very funny. And then at the third line, when he read the third line, a chuckling noise could be heard. That means the servant has now started laughing loudly from the first stage of smile till the laughter. That whole description is given by the writer. The fourth, he broke into a roar. The fifth, his waistband split. The sixth, he burst 5 buttons off and tumbled in a fit. 10 days and nights, with sleepless eye, I watched that wretched man, and since I never dare to write as funny as I can. So this was the outcome of the writing, or this was the outcome of the lines that he had written, that they were so funny that the servant, when he read the fourth line, he broke into a roar. At the fifth line, his waistband split. Waistband is a kind of additional cloth that the servants tie around their waist. So that was split, and then when he read the sixth line, he burst 5 buttons off. So he couldn't control himself. He started tumbling down, which means that the excerpt or whatever lines were written, they were so funny and so humorous. And then 10 days and night with sleepless eye, the writer, he watched that wretched man and he decided that he will never dare to write as funny as he could. Let us now look at few new words that we learn in this poem. Ridiculous, too funny to believe. Wondrous, delightful, albeit, though, sober, clear headed, or serious, trifling, a small simple joke of no importance, wretched, in this poem it means in a helpless condition. Appreciation of the poem. The poem The Height of the Ridiculous by Oliver Wendell Holmes is a humorous poem written for enjoyment with plenty of funny expressions. The main purpose of the poet is to simply entertain his audience. The rhyme scheme of the poem is ABCB. There are many figures of speech like hyperbole, tautology, onomatopoeia, alliteration, etc. But the one that stands out is transferred epithet. In the line 10, 10 days and nights with sleepless eye, the adjective sleepless should be for the man and not for the eye. This is a humorous poem. The special feature of the poem are the expressions that indicate funny moments. The reader forms a mental picture and enjoys the poem. My favorite line is the sixth, he burst 5 buttons. I like this line because I can imagine the way the man must have been laughing till he burst the buttons on his coat. I like the poem because it is a light, simple, and entertaining poem. Students, when you have to write an appreciation of the poem, you need to include all these points. Like I spoke about the title and the name of the poet. After that, the purpose or the theme. Then came the rhyme scheme, the figures of speech. You need to give example of at least one or two figure of speech. Then you have to talk about the special features of the poem. Then whenever you write about your favorite line, you have to explain why you like that line. Because many a times we just write the line and we don't explain the reason why you like the line or what was something that attracted you from that line. And then finally we talk about any other special features, anything more about the poem, and then this is how we finish the appreciation. Appreciation is generally for 5 marks, so we need to see to it that we are covering all the points and all the points are given equal justification. Poetic devices. The rhyme scheme of the poem is ABCB, and the special features of the poem are that the poem is light, simple, and entertaining. The writing is very easy to understand, and the theme of the poem is nothing but entertaining. Let us look at the rhyming pairs. In the first stanza, we have mood, good. Second stanza, die, I. Third stanza, him, limb. Fourth stanza, way, pay. Fifth stanza, within, grin. Sixth stanza, year, here. Seventh stanza, split, fit. And eighth stanza, man, can. There are many figures of speech in this poem, namely tautology, alliteration, onomatopoeia, repetition, hyperbole, and transferred epithet. Example of tautology is in wondrous merry mood. Here in the sentence, the words wondrous and merry mean the same, and so it is an example of tautology. Alliteration. The grin grew broad. In this sentence, the letter G is repeated twice for better poetic effect, and so it is an example of alliteration. Example of onomatopoeia is he broke into a roar. Here the word roar denotes the sound of laughter. Onomatopoeia is a figure of speech which talks about sounds, and here the word roar is denoting the sound of laughter. So it is an example of onomatopoeia. Repetition. Example, they were so queer, so very queer. Here the word queer is repeated twice for poetic effect. Repetition is a figure of speech in which a whole word is repeated for more than once. Hyperbole. Hyperbole is a figure of speech in which the statement is exaggerated or there is an overstatement made. Example, and shot from year to year. Here, the wideness of the grin is exaggerated to show that the servant found the poem too funny. Transferred epithet 10 days and nights with sleepless eye. Here, the adjective sleepless should be for the man and not for the eye. Okay, usually human beings they are sleepless, not their eyes. So when this quality of human is transferred to only one part of the body, that is called as transferred epithet. So basically transferred epithet is a figure of speech in which we use only part of the whole to describe. Now let us have a quick evaluation. Question number 1. Order of sequence. Arrange the following reactions in their proper order as per the poem. A. His waistband split. B. The grin grew broad. C. Sleepless eye. D. Was all upon the grin. E. He broke into a roar. F. He burst 5 buttons off. To understand the sequence, you need to read the poem. When you read the whole poem, you will understand the arrangement. See to it that you don't make mistake in this kind of questions because these questions are very easy. You have direct answers from the text. So you need to read very carefully and be a little more vigilant when you're reading and then arrange the sentences. The answer to this question will be first line will be was all upon the grin. Next is the grin grew broad. After that comes his waistband. He broke into a roar. Next is his waistband split. Next, he burst 5 buttons. And the last will be sleepless eye. Question number 2. Which line suggests that the servant was totally out of control? This is the sixth line in which the servant he falls on the ground, he splits all his 6 buttons. So this shows that he was completely out of control. Question number 3. What was the outcome of this experience on the poet? We can see this in the last line that the poet decides that he will never write anything as funny as what he had written. Question number 4. I wrote some lines once on a time. Name and explain the figure of speech in the given line. Well, the word O, The letter O is repeated twice, so the figure of speech here is alliteration. I hope you understood the poem. Thank you.